60s Doctor Who in colour, sacrilegious or fergalicious? Definition, make my Daleks colour. This controversial new release from the Doctor Who team is not only adding colour to the first ever Dalek story from 1964, but also presenting it with a brand new cut down edit with a bombastic new sound mix. Is it everything you need and more? Or is it your worst nightmare? Today, I'm going to discuss what I loved and what I didn't, and discuss which stories I'd like to see in glorious Technicolor. Disclaimer, I know a lot of people working on this release, so you may cry bias, but like always, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm Australian. We tell people how we're feeling. We don't beat around the bush. I know them so well that even one of the colour artists, Kieran Hyman, was staying with me whilst he was working on it. But he didn't tell me anything about it though, the lying mole, so our friendship is over. According to Rich Tipple, the lead colour artist on the project, Bad Wolf saw my documentary about the Dalek Masterplan Episode 2 colorization, and that was the catalyst for this project to happen in the first place. So, if you liked this colorization, you have me solely to thank for it. I basically did it all by myself. And if you hated it, I had nothing to do with it. So, Russell, where's my job? Where's my fucking money, Russ? Does the T in RTD stand for thievery? For theft? Russell Thieving Davies? Just transfer me $10,000 and I'll let it go. Then we can be besties again. Okay, now that I have the bias disclaimer out of the way, let's break it down. Colorization. I have always loved the idea of colorizing 60s Doctor Who. I'm going to talk about this point further down, but I've watched the classic series so many times that I know it off by heart. So whenever the BBC release an old story with new CGI, it excites me because it's a new way of enjoying a story I love already. I can only sit down and watch the same story so many times. So by giving colour to the Daleks, it really brings it to life. It feels familiar but brand new. The artist's work on skin tones is breathtaking, even down to Barbara's eyeshadow. The attention to detail is phenomenal, especially considering how much work there was to be done. I feel like a lot of people have seen the gaudy colorizations of yesteryear, where they just feel like one color has been put over someone's skin and it's just not convincing at all. But with this release, it feels so true to life. The team has clearly chosen some colors that wouldn't have been present in the original production in order to give it a bit more life. I personally love the vast majority of those choices. There were a few scenes where I felt it was a bit over the top. I know a lot of people didn't like Barbara's bright pink shirt, but that never bothered me. I think some of the purple walls in the Dalek control room were a bit much, but that's just my own personal taste. Within minutes, you don't even question that it's colorized. Obviously you know it is, but it's not distracting. You can just enjoy the story for what it is, which is incredible. I think if they chose to go completely accurate with the original colours, it would be a lot of silver and would completely defeat the purpose of adding colour. I think it's just great to see fans who are so passionate about Doctor Who and colorization get a chance to work on an official release. A project like this felt like it would never happen, and if it did, it would be like a one-off episode like Unearthly Child for like an anniversary thing. But now they're working on a second release for this year apparently, which is hugely exciting. I really can't fault any of the colorization work, and I feel like most people feel the same. Where a lot of the criticism comes is in the form of the edits. The edit. The original story of the Daleks is split over 7 episodes, roughly 25 minutes each. Condensing that many episodes into 75 minutes is a tough gig. I would be terrified to even attempt it. I want to start off by saying that I think the first 45-50 minutes of the edit is just incredible. It keeps all of the core points, it doesn't feel too fast, and it really gives the story momentum. When we get to the last 20 odd minutes, it can sometimes feel a bit rushed, to the point where some of the story beats don't really make sense with the rest of the edits. Ultimately, I like the edit way more than I thought I would. I think one of the main criticisms I've seen people have is the flashback cutaways. These would happen during the middle of scenes when they weren't necessary. But early 60s Doctor Who was notorious for filming entire scenes with just a handful of camera angles. Some scenes were done in just one wide shot with no close-ups. So if you wanted to edit a scene down, it would be really difficult to find something to cut to. It's clear these flashbacks were used in order to shorten scenes so they could cut the dialogue up. Was I a massive fan of the flashbacks? No. But were they necessary to hit the 75-minute mark? Definitely. I think some of the time they were effective. But when they weren't, I understood why they were there. I think it was a really creative way to find something to cut to, something I'd never thought about before. The new additional CGI I thought was quite good. I would have liked to see more shots of the city. They seem to have reused the same shot of the model city quite a lot, and would have been nice to utilise the new CGI model they made, but it didn't ruin my enjoyment. I personally love a cut down edit of Doctor Who for the same reason I stated earlier. It's a new way to enjoy a story I know and love. Sitting down to watch all 7 episodes can be a bit of a slog, but sitting through 75 minutes, I can do that in an afternoon. I know the story beats so well, I don't need to drag through them. I wonder what the edit was like for those who hadn't seen the original serial, all 7 episodes. I wonder if the plot points resonated and made sense. I watched this new edit all on my own, like I do with most Doctor Who. Watching Doctor Who is a very serious business, and I can't watch it with someone laughing about how cheap it is next to me. The show is so embarrassing, it's my secret shame. Anyway, I can understand those who wish they colorized all 7 episodes. In an ideal world, that would be brilliant. But the amount of time and effort to colorize these episodes is enormous. 75 minutes is a hell of a long colorization as it is. One scene which was a bit difficult to understand on the first viewing was when Susan says she has a plan. Then it cuts to a funky music montage where they play out her plan. I think the music and the edit was perfect, but since it wasn't shot that way, it was a bit of a jolt when I first watched it. On second viewing, it wasn't such a whiplash. I love Susan's wink as well, very Barbie. The other part where I got lost was when the Doctor and Susan split up from Barbara and Ian. Barbara and Ian in the caves made perfect sense, but the Doctor and Susan's plan was completely lost to me. Especially the part with the Thals shining reflective light on the city. I had no idea what was going on. I think I would have just cut the reflective light scene and just had the Doctor and Susan destroy the control box and then get captured. But I'm not sure. It's the problem when you cut so much, you lose some context. But it didn't ruin my overall enjoyment. I think Benjamin Cook and the other editors did an amazing job. As someone who has done their own cut down edits in their spare time, I know how difficult it is when you have such limited amounts of shots. But they used a lot of interesting and creative ways to make scenes shorter and more dynamic. It's really an impressive feat. It feels so much more contemporary, but also classic and familiar. I'm looking forward to how they will approach these cut down edits in the future. The sound design. When I first saw that Mark Ayres was working on a brand new sound mix based off the original music, but added more on top, I was super excited. Mark's work on the Blu-ray range has been stellar. He manages to make everything so crystal clear and does wonders on his 5.1 surround mixes. So when this release came out, I was kind of shocked about how loud everything was. At points, the dialogue was difficult to make out. It felt closer to the early Russell T Davies series on Blu-ray, but I only felt that way during some of the scenes. Since I knew the story so well, I already knew what the dialogue was on about anyway. I think the new music most of the time was respectful to the original, but added a new modern twist on it. It felt like a true hybrid of classic 60s and new series music. It's a difficult brief that he was given, especially since the original Tristram Carey score is so iconic. He takes pieces of music from other Hartnell and later Dalek stories and creates sort of a hybrid. And I think the first time we see the Daleks is a lot more impactful with this new music. I think the new sound design with all the added sound effects were on the whole really enjoyable. 60s Doctor Who really misses out on not having a proper Foley mix. Those new sound effects really adds to the whole experience. It feels beefier. It's hip, naughty, funky, fresh. I think if the dialogue was a bit clearer, I wouldn't be as critical of it. Speaking of dialogue, they also recorded new dialogue with the original Dalek voice, David Graham, and some additional stuff with Nicholas Briggs. I feel like the new dialogue is quite seamless, most of the time. If you're listening to hear faults, you'll notice that it's new. But if you're not paying that close attention, it feels natural. They adjusted the dialogue to make the story tie closer to Genesis of the Daleks, with mention of the colourised. This type of change doesn't really bother me. It's a simple little fix that I actually quite liked. It just ties the two stories together in a neat little package. The sound design was super ambitious, and I think the majority of it was a Paramount success. Overall thoughts. Overall, this project is something that is tailored specifically to my taste. I've seen Classic Who a million times. I want a new experience. I love the idea of colorization, even though I adore black and white. I think the team working on it are the right people for the job. I love cut down re-edits of Classic Who. I think they're a fun alternate way of watching our favourite stories. I love a new sound mix, adding extra dimensionality to the production. Ultimately, this is for me. I can totally understand why people dislike the idea of colorization since it wasn't the original intention. I totally understand why people hate cut downs, since they feel like it ruins the original pacing and the fact that it was never meant to be cut down so aggressively. I totally understand why people love the original score and think adding new music is a step too far. But for me, personally, this is what it's all about. For those people who don't like this approach, the original is still there intact on DVDs, eventually on Blu-ray, and for free on iPlayer if you're in the UK, or you have a VPN. I cannot wait to see what the future entails. Future of colorizations. Now that the Daleks colorization is complete, and they've announced they're working on another one, now it's time to speculate. What story do you think will get the treatment next? The rumours I've heard is Tomb of the Cybermen or The War Games. Is there any truth to these? Only time will tell. I couldn't imagine how difficult it would be to cut down The War Games, a 10-episode story, into 75 minutes. Surely that one would have to be longer. It would be incredible to see that story in colour though, the richness of the greens of the battlefields. And I would love to see 60s Gallifrey in colour. Tomb of the Cybermen is my first thought for a Troughton. But when you think about that story, it would be very grey and blue, wouldn't it? The tomb would be covered in ice and the Cybermen are silver. There wouldn't be that much that easily lends itself to colour. The desert on Telos is only seen for a handful of scenes, so even those colours are going to waste. But then you could say the Dalek city on Skaro was notoriously silver, and they managed to add colour, so who knows? As for Hartnell's, I'd love to see the Sensorites given a proper cut down edit. I feel like the early episodes of that story, the spook factor would be high, if given a tighter cut. I think the War Machines would be kind of sick as well, to see 60s London in colour. The Inferno nightclub would be beautiful. And for Troughton, I'd love to see Tomb of the Cybermen, obviously. And I think the Mind Robber would be quite beautiful. Either way, whatever they choose, I will be first in line to watch it. I cannot wait to see what happens next. I cannot believe I know these moles and they didn't tell me that they were working on this, and they won't tell me what's next. What's more important, my friendship or an NDA? Friendship revoked. Well anyway, what story would you like to see colorized next? And if you like this video, please like and or comment. The algorithm loves it and wants to eat it up like a tasty little treat. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Josh Snares YouTube channel. Okay, another one.